So welcome. This is the second in our series of celebrating Asian legal careers. This is a seminar series that we have designed, which brings together a host of different people who have all in their own ways forged a legal career. We're very proud to be hosting the Asian Law Centre with the Asian Australian Lawyers Association at this event. And the idea is really that it gives us and it gives students especially an opportunity to see that an Asian legal career can be forged in many different ways. That each of us has our own different experience and our own different path, and that these paths always involve challenges, but in the end, you know, you can see that here we are. And so today we have Molina Asthana. Now, Molina, unfortunately, is one of those super women. I would never aspire.
I'm not.
To be as religious. But I'm so glad that you're here to share your experiences with us. So you'll see from the information that Molina is the first South Asian woman to be elected as President-elect of the Law Institute of Victoria. She's currently the National President of the Asian Australian Lawyers Association, which does fabulous work across a range of different areas to build community, to support colleagues, you know, sort of a solidarity and really is a success-driven type of organisation to celebrate Asian Australian lawyers and the work they do and to support them. Apart from that, she's an experienced commercial lawyer. She's practiced in top-tier Australian firms, the Victorian Government Solicitor's Office and in the Supreme Court of India. She's on various boards, and I can see that there's, apart from Graduate House, which is excellent in case we want to go eating, but also Gymnastics Australia, AFL South East Commission, Table Tennis Victoria, as well as the Australasian Centre for Human Rights and Health. So I can see that you've devoted a lot of your genius to supporting sporting bodies as well, which is fabulous. So we've worked quite a lot with Molina over time collaboratively, and we'll look forward to working with you a lot more. Molina is a person of the most fabulous energy, intelligence and integrity, and we're so delighted to be able to hear your story today. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, and thanks so much for that kind introduction. I don't know whether I'll be able to live up to it now that you've spoken me up so much, but you've talked me up so much. So thank you so much. Thanks to the Asian Law Centre for inviting me to speak. I want to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and to any other elders who may be present with us today. So I guess I'm speaking a little bit about my journey. So I do have some notes, but I'm just going to speak to it. I started out in India ages ago. I can't even remember when. It's been over 25 years. So I did my law degree in India. I come from a family of lawyers and judges, legal luminaries. So it sort of was an expected pathway, but I wasn't quite sure that I wanted to do that. While I was at uni, I did a commerce degree, and I thought I'm going to do an MBA and become an executive in a multinational. That's what all of us wanted to do at that point in time. But I think somehow those dinner table conversations that we had always in the family got to me, and midway through my commerce degree, I decided I want to do law. So after I finished my commerce degree, I did a law degree from Delhi University. My father had a practice, so I did join him, but I also worked with some other firms. And just before I moved to Australia, I was working as a legal manager for one of the largest, at that time, one of the largest conglomerates in India, the Escorts group of companies. They had diversified businesses like tractor manufacturing, telecommunications, health, heart institutes, and so many others. The interesting thing about working, I suppose, in being in the legal profession in India was, even though I came from a legal background, it was always, there was still that a lot of sexism, and there was that expectation that there was obviously more women. By the time I got into the profession, there was a lot more women, but still not enough to be able to see that change. So I was expected to, if I wore a dress like this, I would be, comments were made about the way I was dressed up, not looking at my caliber, but rather how I presented myself. So I was expected to wear a traditional dress, the sari, or the other traditional dress, and you'd often hear comments from our fellow, lawyers, mostly senior ones, saying, "Well, this is not, you think you're in school or something," and even the judges. I mean, they never pulled me up, but they apparently did pull up women who were not, they thought were not appropriately dressed up, which is not wearing the traditional dress. I think things have changed now, but they were quite traditional when I was there, and also with in terms of working with clients, because I started doing I was sort of had my own practice as well, which I developed when I was at my father's firm. There were clients that were not, didn't have the confidence that I'd be able to, deliver and that I could possibly be that as good as a older male lawyer. So I had to sometimes have my father in the same room as when I was having a meeting, just so that they had confidence in me, in my abilities. But I guess still I came from a place of privilege, so I was able to establish myself. I did a number of public interest litigations, which I will speak about a bit later, which I think got me a bit more, I guess, in the public eye. So my work was recognized, and I think at that point it was my abilities sort of overtook that the bias that people had, subconscious, unconscious bias that people had for women practicing in the law. So I moved to Australia about 18 years ago. I got married to someone from here. At that point, I decided I'm going to do a Master's of Law degree, because coming to a new country, you always have to, you take a bit of time off to understand your new environment, to potentially get a local degree. And I always wanted to do a master's, and Melbourne Uni is fantastic. So luckily I got admission at Melbourne University at the law school. So I was here. I did my master's of law in commercial law. And then I started applying to, while I was doing that, I was applying to do some work in the law firms, and it was quite difficult because my degree and my experience were discounted, and a number of recruiters told me that I would never get work at a big firm, let alone, not even at a small firm, let alone big firms. But I was sort of quite persistent, and I had decided that I will be working, hopefully we'll be working for a big firm. So I did, anyways, I completed my Master's of Law. I did get a job at Allen's Linklaters, it was called Allen's Arthur Robinson at that time, as a research assistant. I was just doing 1 or 2 days a week. And then I applied to get accredited to practice. Whilst I was doing my Master's, I was told that I had to do 4 undergrad subjects again and 6 months of training, which is still all right. I think a lot of people who came after me have been asked to do about 11 subjects, the priestly subjects, which has been difficult for them, and many have been deterred in joining the profession because of that. But in any case, I was lucky, but I also, by the time that assessment came through from VLab, I knew what I had to do, and I was, through my persistence, was able to get a job at one of the top tiers, Clayton Utz as well. And the partner there was really nice. He let me take time off to do my subjects, and also let that work there count as training that I was meant to do. After that, I moved to Minter Ellison, another top tier. And while I was working there, I always narrate this story. I was, a recruiter called me, and who I'd been speaking to before, and said, "I've got an opening at a boutique firm for you, a boutique, small, country, not country practice, like a suburban practice." So I said, "I'm working at Minter Ellison," and he nearly died of shock. He said, and his first reaction was not to congratulate me. He was like, "How did you get that?" And that was really disappointing to sort of hear from, to sort of face that kind of bias. And I guess that's where, I call it the double whammy, that especially that women of color face. So in India, it was always the bias. It was the glass ceiling that I was trying to break, but here it was the double glazed glass ceiling as a woman of color. So the opportunities were always limited because of my background. and you had to really push hard. You were your mistakes are picked up. As a person of color, your mistakes are picked up more than someone of an Anglo-Celtic or Anglo-Saxon background. And at big firms as well, you constantly you feel a bit isolated because you are meant to join them for steak clubs, and I don't eat beef. You're meant to hang around Friday night drinks, talk about footy, talk about. Now I sit on the commission, but at that point I was fairly new to the country. I didn't know that much about footy. I didn't follow a team, although my husband was insisting I go for North Melbourne. I was resisting that. and you were meant to sort of have watched the TV shows that they grew up with, or the conversations were very much, and the private schools they went to, which I obviously didn't grow up in Australia, so I didn't go to those private schools. So you did feel a little bit isolated, and most people, and obviously in big firms the culture is very competitive. So most people won't talk to you unless there was, they wanted to something to do with you. If you have work, they'll come and ask you who gave you that work and how do you get that. So it was always that culture, and I don't think it's quite toxic at times. And I know because now, obviously, I lead the Asian Australian Lawyers Association. When I do narrate my experiences, a lot of people come up to me and say that they've had similar experiences as well, people of diverse background. So it wasn't new, but obviously at that point, it really I was struggling. Obviously, I was new to the country, still new to the country, and I was trying to adjust to a new way of life, and to face that unconscious bias was quite, I think it was debilitating, and it doesn't, it does impact you. So I started, and I talk about it now, I wouldn't talk about it then. I was getting anxiety, and I didn't realize I was getting anxiety, and I had to get, medical help for that. But eventually, and I decided I'm going to leave that toxic environment because it's not really helpful. So I moved to the Victorian Government Solicitor's Office as a principal solicitor in the commercial, technology, and property team. So I was mainly doing commercial and then some technology work as well, which was really interesting work. And the government is more diverse than private law firms are as well. So that was really good. Although eventually you do realize there's a ceiling there as well, because it took them about 100 years to have a woman as a Victorian government solicitor. I don't know how long it would take for them to have a person of color. So I knew that eventually there will be that ceiling, and I was a principal solicitor, and I knew there's a couple of steps above that, but it'll be very difficult for me to get up there. So I decided, rather than trying to attain something which may take 10 years, I might as well start my own practice and serve the community, the diverse communities, and that's what I do now. And that has been really, really, I think it's been much more fulfilling. And through that journey as well, I didn't speak about it before, but I also started getting more involved in community work. So I was asked to sit on a not-for-profit board, which was working with illegal prostitutes in Mumbai. They had an MOU with a not-for-profit in India, and they were looking for a lawyer who was potentially from an Indian background. So a colleague approached me when I was at the government to ask if I would be interested, and then I had a couple of meetings with them, and it sounded like a really good opportunity. So I took on that board, and that led to others, and I was getting more and more involved with the community work. And the Asian Australian Lawyers Association came up in about 2013, and I met some of the founding members, and I don't know if you were there. William Lai spoke last time at one of these talks, and him and a few others had gotten together to start this organization. And I said, that sounds amazing. I wish there was something like that when I started out in the profession. And I was convinced to join the executive committee, which I did. So I think I've been involved with the Asian Australian Lawyers Association right from the beginning, probably a second meeting. So it's the first organization that focuses on issues of Asian Australian lawyers in Asian Australian lawyers, and for people who have an interest in Asia. Our main purpose is to see more diversity, work towards seeing more diversity in the legal profession. And we do have a number of initiatives from lawyers of every stage of their life, which is starting from as students. So we do have a student arm as well. We work closely with students. We early lawyers who are new to the profession, even later lawyers, and then mid-career, and then senior as well. We try and involve seniors so that they can contribute, as well as a lot of the younger lawyers can learn from them as well. So we have initiatives like we have the mentoring program, we have a scholarship program, the William Market Scholarship Program, which Andrew would know about, because the Melbourne University is now sort of one of the partners of that program, and it has been going really well. It's usually a student writes a paper on diversity. Usually, and I think it's in the legal profession, we always come up with a different themes, but within that remit. So that has been a flagship initiative of ours. We also have the National Summit, which we started out 2 years ago. This is the 3rd year that we'll be running it. We've had international speakers and national speakers of very high caliber. And this one, next one is coming up in the end of September. So I'll send around the details to all of you. Hopefully you can attend. It's free, it's online, and it's really, we've had really good reviews. Usually it's about 600 people or so who register. At least 350 attend on the day, and then others look at the recordings as well. So that's another one of our initiatives. We have a number of seminars and workshops and leadership series and a court advocacy series, and so many programs to support our Asian lawyers and others who have an interest in Asia. Also social events, like we've had Diwali, and we have Chinese New Year. We have end of the year drinks, which we just had 2 weeks ago. A lot of judges are also part of the organization, so you can learn a lot from them if you want to be part of it. And as it's free for students, or maybe a very small charge, and it's $100 for others. So anyway, that's my pitch for Asian State Lawyers Association. But I'm actually saying that not just because I'm the president, but because I really feel it has helped a lot of people like me. And if it had existed when I started out, I probably would have been at least not gone through what I went through. So I guess that's sort of the Asian Australian Lawyers Association. I've been involved with other organizations like the International Law Association. I was leading the Victorian chapter. It's a little defunct at the moment in Victoria, especially because we lost a lot of people who moved overseas to do really exciting projects, which meant that we lost them. But hopefully that can be revived soon. So I also sit on the board of Law Institute of Victoria. I was the president-elect, but we've changed the governance structure recently. We made it more corporatized. It's less of a representational board as it was before, to a smaller board, which is consists of 9 lawyers and now 3 externals as well. So we see how we go with that. I am constantly pushing the some of the agendas of there, which include diversity and inclusion. I chair this diversity committee there. I also chair the sexual harassment task force. I chair the sports law committee. I co-chair the corporate commercial section. So I'm very involved with the Law Institute, but I think if you're really interested in advocacy, I think it's a good place to sort of join with some of the sections and become part of that, because make submissions to the government or LCA. There's 200-300 submissions made every year. So it's a good platform if you're really interested in advocacy as well. And again, sexual harassment, again, is a big issue in the legal profession. And so I've been working through the Law Institute, but also various other hats in that area as well. And we do encourage our younger lawyers to be involved. We do work very closely with the Young Lawyers Association, Young Lawyers section of the Law Institute, which is huge. They've got like 7,000 members or something. So they're massive. And I encouraged a lot of law students to be part of that as well, because they do have a number of good initiatives that they're part of. So I think if any of you are interested, please do that. And plus also join the Asian Australian Lawyers Association. So the other side that Sarah had mentioned as well, that I'm really involved in the sporting side. I do sit on a number of other boards, and that's because I've got the governance background now, and I'm a lawyer, and usually they look for lawyers in the legal on boards, and I think that's a good opportunity for some others who want to contribute to community and bearing having that the skills of a lawyer. You should think about it in the future. So the sporting side, again, it came about with my passion for seeing more diversity and inclusion as well in this in all areas. So sport is one of them. So when I came to Australia, I wasn't really an athlete in India. I barely did anything, and I think I won one medal in my life in school for some race. So when I came here, I was so encouraged by the culture that I saw, the sporting culture that I saw, people running, walking, cycling to work, and this everywhere you see grounds are full of people playing sports, some kind of some sport. So I thought, and then my husband was born here, and he's very obviously he loves his sport and footy. So I decided I'm gonna start running, and I started doing half marathons, and which has been amazing. And But I also then saw through that process, there wasn't that many women of diverse backgrounds who were participating in sport. And through the community work that I was doing, I was asked to become an ambassador for AFL, and then Cricket Australia, and then the Jean Haley's Women's Health. And again, same thing, I was trying to push more diversity. And then I realized I have to do something really, I have to work to see this in every sport. So I started an organization, not-for-profit called Multicultural Women in Sport, to try and get women of diverse backgrounds engaged in sport and empower them through sport. So I've been working with a lot of sporting organizations to help them structure some of the programs that they roll out to the community, and also helping them get more women into their already existing programs. And on the other hand, I work with a lot of grassroots organizations, grassroots clubs to help to assist them in being more, not assist, well, I suppose advocate for more, for having more safe and inclusive environments for women of color. So letting them play with hijabs or longer clothing, or create women-only spaces. So that's been in my work of, it's my passion. And now I sit on a number of sports boards as well, which has come through all this work that I've been doing in sport. And hopefully I'm being able to contribute to that. So, so that's sort of like my journey. I wanted to talk a little bit about the sort of similarities of having practiced in two Asian jurisdictions, India and Australia, and also the differences. So in terms of similarities, I suppose, sorry, I just have some water. We both come from common law. We're both common law countries, so the law is pretty similar. And origins of the law are similar. So we still have, I think, because of the development of law during the British times, a lot of it is still civil procedure code, criminal procedure code are from that time. The Companies Act, although there's obviously a lot has changed, there has been a lot of local laws that have been local, I suppose, nuances that have been incorporated in those laws. And plus, there's obviously a lot of legislation in India, maybe one of the most legislated. You probably know more, you've been there more recently, and some of you that there's a lot of legislation that's enacted constantly. So, so the similarity of common law was always there. I guess probably that was the only similarity I saw. But by the time I left India, there was a growth in a number of firms that were initially only, so the Partnership Act prevented partners, anyone having more a firm larger than 20 people. So in my time, there was smaller firms. So even the firms, large firms I worked for, didn't have more than 20 partners. But after I left, the LLPs, the limited liability partnerships came, and then I think there's larger firms now there as well. So there's a lot more. There's more similarity now with the bigger firms here than that there was when I sort of was practicing. A number of differences were, of course, there that India is mainly litigation. You see a more litigation there because it is sort of still affordable as compared to Australia. So it's a litigating country. So everyone wants to litigate, and it is most of the lawyers, at least when I was there, were 80% were in litigation and only 20% probably in other areas. So you would tend to see a lot more, smaller firms, privately held, family firms that were predominant, which were kind of the structure that was more predominant in the legal field. Whereas here, obviously, there's larger firms. There is, of course, smaller firms as well. There's suburban, regional, but there is the large firm culture, which is pretty big. And that's the difference that I saw when I came from a smaller. Obviously, I worked in smaller firms there, and I worked for corporate. But when I moved here, working for someone like Clayton Utz or Mintel, there are 500 people in one office. It's quite different. And also the collegiality bit, and that's how the personal side. So in India, if you start working in an office, the first day, everyone's sort of like, they'll know everything about you in the first day that you join, and you're sharing your lunch. But the next day, and by the end of the week, you're in the house. So it's a very different culture. Whereas here, it's a lot more. There's a lot more formality. You will go out for Friday night drinks. You may socialize with them, but not so much. It's still kind of a little bit more formal, the structures. And I think that also is a bit of a problem for people coming from a different background, diverse backgrounds, because we don't find that collegiality. We don't find that feeling of being at home when you sort of you're coming from another background. So that's a bit of a difference. Of course, the work culture is quite different as well. In India, now lawyers work hard everywhere, but in India, most lawyers work on Saturdays and sometimes on Sundays as well. So it's they really work hard. And I know here as well, a lot of them would. And I worked in mergers and acquisitions and banking and finance here, and it was really, I did all-nighters, and I used to work till 12 o'clock a lot of times, and even at 7 or 8 o'clock I had to escape. Literally feel like I feel like if I'm leaving office, I'm not doing the right thing. I should be working till late because everyone else was, and there's always food in the fridge, and there was a cab charge, which is not attractive enough, I feel. but there was these opportunities to stay. You were encouraged to stay back, and I think but in India it was just people work really, really hard, and it's a lot more kind of as I said, litigation. So you've got to prepare for Monday cases. You're going to be working on Sundays. The court system as well, like there's so many cases in India. For those who are from India would probably know, like if you go to a Supreme Court, Monday and Fridays are miscellaneous days where an appeal would either be admitted or denied, or rejected, or and on Tuesday to Thursdays are when the appeals actually are heard. And Monday to Fridays are frantic. Like in the morning, the judges sit about, I think it's 10 or 10:30. By 1 o'clock, they finished about 100 files. If just either, they are thorough. It's not like they haven't looked at it. They'll open up a page and say, okay, page this, explain to me. If the lawyer cannot explain in 30 seconds, the files are thrown off. It's like dismissed. Everything is dismissed. It's a very, it's very intimidating. But I guess some of the lawyers are very seasoned and they totally understand, how to navigate that system as well. So it's very different here. It's a lot more, I suppose, there's not that many cases every day that the courts here. You won't go to court and see hundreds of people walking around, either as lawyers or as litigants walking around. It's very few, and there's I suppose the workload caseload is much lighter here, although the judges, I'm sure, are working equally hard. So yeah, those are some of the differences that I've kind of noticed in practicing there and here. And I said the bias that I was talking about is something that I really have struggled with, and I think that a lot of people like me are still struggling with, and that we have to work. So we've had numerous conversations with, more lately through the Asian Australian Lawyers Association, with chief justices of courts and other judges, and a lot of other organizations, the LCA. We are hoping to see more diversity in the judiciary as well. That is something that we're working on. I met the Attorney General, the new Attorney General last week, and he was quite encouraging of that. And he asked for suggestions on what he could do to see more diversity in the legal profession. So I'm very excited that hopefully we will see some change. Circling back on this diversity piece, some of the initiatives that we're working on, especially with the Asian Law Center, is one is with Sarah. We're hoping to revive our cultural diversity report that we published. I think it was 2015 was when we published it. It was looking at the legal profession in Australia, and where the diversity and what diversity looks like. And so it's like a pyramid. You'll see like 4 or 5 people at the bottom, keeps going 3, 2, and there's maybe 0 at the top. There's no judges. We don't see any judges in there's some partners of Asian background in firms, but there's no judges in the High Court or Supreme. There's a 1 or 2 in Supreme. Oh, you can actually count them on your fingers, the number that are in Supreme Court. So that's something we want to do the cultural diversity report again to see if anything has changed. What are the barriers that people face in terms of going up higher up in the ladder in the legal profession, and sort of what initiatives that the Asian Australian Lawyers Association can work on. We want to hear from our community. We've got a pilot project running in New South Wales, and we've spoken to the LCA whether they can support us with a nationwide project. So hopefully we can work on that with the Asian Law Centre, with Melbourne Law School. The other one is the Super Diversity Report, which Andrew is working with us on, and the Super Diversity. It is the litigant's experience, a CALD litigant, which is a culturally and linguistically diverse person of culturally and linguistically diverse background, a litigant of that background's experience in the court system. So there's a number of things that are play when a litigant of a diverse background is sort of has a matter going in court or appears as a witness, or for example, some of the things that have been there's a super diversity report which has been written by my chair from New Zealand, and which we are adapting to the Australian legal system. So that talks about, for example, that Chinese people of Chinese background don't necessarily have formality in terms of their contracts. They don't have written contracts. In the context here, and I think Justice Gairu might have spoken from the Supreme Court, might have spoken on that, is it's when say, for example, a litigant or witness is appearing in court, if they have Asian background, they usually have their eyes lowered because of their respect for authority, and that is taken as maybe perhaps as body language, as something that it's people might think that they're lying, or they're trying to hide something. That's why they're not looking them directly in the eye. So those are the cultural differences that you see when you're. That's the experience of culturally and linguistically diverse people in court, and we don't want the court's justice system to marginalize these people through not consciously, but subconsciously, these things are happening. It happens in translation, interpreting, and all those things as well. So we're working on that paper, which should be released pretty soon, and we'll be inviting submissions from all the stakeholders on that, and come out with a comprehensive report for Australia. So that's another exciting project that we're working on in terms of seeing more diversity in the legal profession. Then I suppose the last thing I just wanted to sort of talk about is the growing importance of Asia. We do know that Asia is growing in geopolitically. It's a very Asian countries are strong partners for Australia. There was a growing reliance on China, which now Australia is stepping back from. So there's other countries that they are building their I guess their relationship with. The Quad is a good example of, India, Japan, Australia, and the US is a good example of where the strategic, alliances, allegiances may lie. India is an important factor, is becoming an important factor. It's growing in obviously the diaspora, the Indian population is growing in size, but they're also growing in stature, and the economy is growing to a large extent. It's one of the largest, fastest growing economies in the world. So Australia obviously understands the strategic importance of, having India as a partner. And we have our, obviously, we call it the Commonwealth, 3 Cs, Commonwealth, curry and cricket, which bring us together. But there's and I think within the Commonwealth we have the rule of law, which is an important thing. We all have that, so that's something we want to build on as well between the two countries. So the growing importance of Asia, I think, is really relevant for Australia, and how we sort of interact with Asia. And I think the legal systems can be a very good conduit for those relationships as well. And I think the Asian Law Centre is doing a great job in working on this. There's also the Asia Link and other organizations within Melbourne University, Asia in Australia Institute. So those are some of the things that we're seeing in the recent years that have grown in importance. Asia literacy has become really important. So people are creating Asia literate Asian leaders. Sometimes I have a problem with that, because I say there is a lot of Asian leaders in front of you, so use us. You don't need to go out and create a whole breed of Asian leaders. Of course it helps, but there is also a lot of them that are right in front of you, so you could potentially utilize them. And this is one of my, one of the things I'm always advocating with the government and with all stakeholders, even corporates, that you've got to have some of us in leadership positions, Asians in leadership positions. Otherwise, you will not see that change. It'll be superficial. We need to, it's great to talk about cultural diversity in terms of, we love your culture and your food and your traditions, but when it comes to, seeing us in positions of power, we're barely there. So that's where the change needs to happen. So I'll probably stop now. I've spoken for quite a long time, and I want to hear from all of you, and I want to answer any questions that you may have of me. Thank you.
Molina, thank you. And thank you for sharing all of your experiences, because, I think everybody here probably has sort of struggled in one way or another. And it takes a lot of courage to say, that you've struggled, that you felt marginalized, that you felt anxious about it, that it's been difficult. Because I think then what you do is you speak to everybody and everybody's experience, so that we can all, frankly discuss and sort of work our ways around it, past it, beyond it. Clearly, you've gone way beyond and past that with all of the marvellous work. Anyone have any comments or questions or any experience you'd like to share? I can see a big smile at the back.
No, I just wanted to say thank you. I feel really very encouraged having attended this session. I practiced back home as well in Malaysia, and coming here, I have received the same feedback. So I was practicing back home for about 6 years in one of the largest and oldest firms back in Malaysia. But I've still been getting feedback from researchers telling these recruiters telling me, oh, but your practice experience was back home, you don't have a practicing certificate here yet. I'm very certain that they will not be taking you into consideration. But we can see what we can get. And after having that conversation, it's very frequent that they don't get back to me. So there's a lot of following up. So I'm still in that very initial stage, but it's been very motivating hearing from you because I feel like I can make it through it as well, since that you have as well. So
no, I'm glad you feel that way. And I always tell people don't give up, because a lot of people do give up. It is hard. So, but the perseverance does pay off eventually, and you will find a mentor, sponsor, someone who can help you with navigating the system, because and that's why organizations like ours are pretty good. There's also that for other people, there's African Lawyers Network, there's Muslim Lawyers Network, there's a lot of these ones that have come up since we started out as well. Obviously there were the Greek and Italians were there because they're more established communities, but they're already established, so they're not doing as much advocacy as they're doing more social stuff, but we're still in the advocacy stage. So yeah, I would encourage you to join organizations like that. And you have?
Yeah, I have.
Oh, great.
A week and a half ago.
Fantastic. We'll see you at the next event. But yeah, so I would just say don't give up. There is I think there's opportunities there, but you have to be persistent and don't lose heart and always get out of toxic relationships. Not relationships. They are relationships as well. Yeah. They are. You have a relationship with your firm as well and with the people there. So it is a relationship as well. But yeah, toxic environments, because it's not going to help you in the long run. It may give you a good CV, but if it's impacting you, you're impacting your mental health, it's just not worth it.
I wanted to ask, would you say it's better to get into government straight out of uni, or would you prefer to go, as a student, prefer to go to like a top tier firm, as you said? Like, what would you suggest?
It's changing now. I think people go straight from, we've got a lot of, when I was at the Victorian Government Solicitors office, we had people straight coming from on the graduate program and used to work through, and they loved it because it is, I mean, I don't know what the perception was maybe 20, 30 years ago, that not many people go and work for the government because it wasn't considered as, a prestigious thing, or people, if you can't find work at a firm, big firm or whatever, then you work with the government. But it wasn't the case when I joined. It had changed quite a bit. So I don't think there's any right way or wrong way of approaching anything. You can start anywhere. You can be working for a small firm and you could end up it's your passion. I always tell people, follow your passion. If that's something you want to do it. You don't have to think about, okay, I only can go to a big firm, and if I don't get that, then somehow my career is jeopardized. It's not going to be jeopardized. Of course, if you can get it on your CV, you have that bent of mind to work for a big firm, yeah, great. But don't get disheartened if you don't, because there's so many other opportunities. There's heaps of opportunities for lawyers in not-for-profits, working in-house, social work, heaps, even corporate. Like you've got people who are, Amit Bains is, I don't know, was he at Melbourne Law School? I can't remember. He's now at, he's a lawyer, but he's the CEO of Western Bulldogs Football Club. So he's taken a path which is very different from others and gone down that path. A lot of people do. I'm sort of heading more towards, doing a lot of board work. You can end up anywhere. You have to follow your passion.
Sure. Thank you.
And so, do you know what your passion is? If you said, in my ideal world, like with no constraints.
Yeah. I mean, as of now, I'm really interested in Aboriginal law. I think the treaty negotiations would be really interesting to be a part of. I'm also just like trying to get into refugee law as well. Yeah, I think I'm more into that community aspect than like the commercial firms. So it's been a bit of like, because I mean Melbourne Uni focuses so much on getting into a commercial firm. Like we don't get many advertisements like Morris Blackburn, Slater and Gordon, any of those kind of more social firms. So it's really hard to get your head around it sometimes, because that's what they're pushing to you. So
yeah, I think it always has been the traditional way of going into the profession has been I need to get into a big firm and then we'll figure out what happens. But I think there's a lot of opportunities there, and hopefully the law school can also organize, meetings with others and for them to come and have chats with people like yourself to see where your aspirations lie and whether you fit into their work culture.
Sure.
I think there are some opportunities. Talk to us later, we can introduce you to some others.
Sure. Thank you.
Any other ideas? Mary, tell us, what did you think?
No, Molina, it's always a pleasure to hear what you have to say. I mean, I think mine is more of a comment, less of a question. Yeah, just it's fantastic to see women culturally and with diverse backgrounds achieving such great things, either in the legal sphere or more generally, but sort of using their legal background to give back to the community. So yeah, it's been a fantastic session.
Thank you so much.
Does the association also, cover issues of, say, Asian academics and so on, or you mostly focus towards litigants? Litigators.
No. We focus on everything. It's general. So, we work very closely with the Asian Law Center, and we work with Sarah and Andrew. So, we do work with academics as well, because I think there's a role for universities and academics to play in that part as journey as well. So, yeah, we're not constrained by any particular any stakeholder in the legal profession. We work with all of them. So even College of Law and the other PLT providers and others, work with everyone.
Okay. Because I was also wondering, I found your account of learning those mandatory courses pretty interesting, because I think even to teach here or something, you might have to have a basic understanding of Australian law.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is a bit daunting at times, because
Yeah,
I've spent so many years in the Indian legal system and now to just completely pivot around.
I know.
But
But
it's encouraging to hear your story still. The fact that you could transition so well. Sorry.
I'm sorry, so you did property, constitutional law, ethics?
no, not ethics,
Admin?
and trust accountancy. So trust accountancy is barely a subject. So I got lucky. No, because I think ethics is sort of I think in India also we have those subjects. Ethics and jurisprudence and all are quite strong there. So I don't know whether you need to do that again. But I guess these 3, 4 that I did were quite different here than they are in India. So I think that was. And I forgot to mention, if anyone's interested, I can talk to a couple of minutes about the constitution, we might be interested, because the constitution here obviously is a relationship between states and the center and the federal government and the state territories and federal government. It's not a relationship between the state and the people, or people and people, whereas the Indian constitution is. It is all of that, and it enshrines the human rights. It's got the Bill of Rights enshrined, and we don't have that. And I think it's a serious issue here, because everything in India is tested on that basis, that it has to pass that test of constitutionality, which is human rights. Whereas here we don't have that. So we have human rights bits in different legislation, but there's nothing that overarching thing that everything needs to be tested against. In Victoria, we have the Human Rights Charter, and the legislation needs to have a statement of compatibility against the charter, but in other states don't. I don't think other states have that. But it would be good to have. And that's where the public interest litigations that I started to talk about when I was speaking earlier. That also is mainly has been because of the constitution, because the government actions can be challenged on the basis of unconstitutionality, and the PILs, the public interest litigations, anyone can send a letter to the court, and the court can take cognizance. And the matter is heard, and I was involved in a number of them, so that's why I know it used to be such an effective system as well, because judiciary was the only arm of the system that the people had faith in, and now I believe that faith is also going down. But at that time, when my grandfather was a judge in the 80s. And he was known as one of the most respected judges, and him and Justice Krishna Iyer were more on the socialist side, and they were their judgments are still taught. So Justice Krishna is another league, but even my grandfather's judgments are taught, and he was very leftist, and he wrote in the feminine, so his judgments were written in the feminine. So at that time it was, but I know now things have changed. They say appointments have become too political. At that time, they weren't political as much, at least to that extent they were. But things have changed now, which is not a great thing. But I still think that the people have a lot of faith in the judiciary there. They have faith here as well. But as I said, like people of diverse backgrounds, some of them don't. And justice doesn't need to just be done. It needs to be seen to have been done as well. So
Tell me, you're shaking your head wildly.
Yeah, it's not very good right now in India.
So actually connected to that, it's not about like a career pathway related question, but since your association is very influential and all, and a lot is happening in India in terms of marginalization and the rise of Hindu nationalism, and I'm an Indian Muslim.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you guys make interventions, especially since a lot of it is legal, right?
Yeah.
Like the CA and NRC.
So we don't necessarily, because we try not to comment on things that are very political. So, but we do make comments. So, for example, Afghanistan, obviously, we made a statement on that. We'll make a statement, but we know that we've got our membership is quite diverse. So there'll be some people who will be of one view, others will be of another view. So we can't, and as an executive, we've got to make that call on where does that balance lie? So yes, we have not necessarily issued statements in relation to some of the things that have happened in India, but not to that extent because of our wider kind of, wider base of membership. But we do understand some people within our own sort of executive will talk up about it, but then everything goes through the national executive, which is national president, national vice president, national secretary, and national treasurer, and then 5 executive members, general members, and then we have secretaries and president and secretary of each state sitting on it. So it's a big executive. So we usually go by consensus. It has to be over 50%. So sometimes things like that won't get through because people will be like, no, this is too political. We don't want to do that. Some people may feel that they really want to do that. So our previous president was, he didn't want to put out too much stuff about, anything. So now, because he wanted to be more conservative, whereas now we were a younger sort of executive. So everyone's like raring to go, no, we got to talk about everything. So we got to just keep that balance somewhere.
But if I could just add that there are other forums for this work, and you may or may not know that the Asian Law Centre has actually supported and published some of the work on the Citizenship Act and various other sorts of critical work, advocacy work that's been done, sometimes with in cooperation with CCCS, sometimes in cooperation with the Statelessness Centre, but so that sort of scholarly work is really alive and well here in the law school, and you'll be able to find that that there's a mixture of scholarly and advocacy work takes place. And I think that if you have a look on our website, then you'll find some of that. And if you can't find it, ask Catherine. No, I've got grey hair and I'm not allowed to know how to use the internet very well. So I've taken that role very seriously, and I let the young ones to do that. But certainly, if you would like to see that people are concerned and do work in those sorts of areas, there is certainly sort of a strong, critical form of scrutiny and analysis and advocacy going on.
And I think academics are in a better position to do that because if they have more detailed.
The diaspora is more powerful.
The diaspora is powerful, but we're not like, for us, the Asian Australian Lawyers Association is a mix of various diasporas as well. So for us, it's a bit difficult. There is not, I know, but even within the diaspora, that's polarized. I mean, it's very polarized. There's some people who have one view and the others have another view, totally different view. So they fight amongst themselves. I know there's been protests within the diaspora on these issues. They've like literally, have had. It's sort of stuff that we stay out of, because then when we are more political, we focus on issues that are impacting us here in Australia, we're more likely to be able to achieve things for us here with working with the government and other stakeholders.
To what extent has your, knowledge of the Indian legal system helped you practicing here? Because, for instance, in Indian courts, you can possibly cite an Australian court decision saying, okay, on federalism, they've talked about this, a Supreme Court judgment will take it into consideration. So, is there any sort of respect for Indian legal cases and so on?
I think there is some, although I'm not a litigating lawyer, so I don't know what people refer to, but there would be, I think the human rights aspect would definitely be, maybe someone else, maybe, I don't know, Andrew, Sarah, you have more of an idea of this, I don't. But I do believe some of the Indian judgments in relation to human rights may be referred to, but I
certainly think we benefit from looking more regularly at judgments from India and other places in that regard. But I don't think we do it as
Yeah.
as a matter of course.
I mean, in India, you still talk about the Privy Council.
Yeah, well, yes,
Still talking about the Privy Council and others, so,
the usual suspects.
yeah.
The usual, we were saying the usual suspects are cited. So obviously, English case law. And then, you know, you've got your Canada, US,
Yeah.
New Zealand, those sorts of cases are cited often. Malaysia actually is so, well, especially because when you appeal to the Privy Council with the torrent system and various things, there's quite a lot of land law cases, you know, originated in Malaysia.
Surprisingly, in Malaysia, we refer to a lot of Indian cases for land law matters because India's land law is really well written and it's really explored area. So in Malaysian law, we actually refer to a lot of foreign law forms.
I mean, and that is a bias that comes here as well. Sometimes I feel that here, every time we refer to that, maybe it's that, you know, Anglo-Saxon, Anglo-Celtic heritage that is more given more prominence than anything else. But anyway, I'm just being a little provocative.
No, it's so true. Like we don't learn about any Indian cases in any of the priestly subjects yet. It's really sad. Like we don't even get to read about Indian scholars at all. Like even in my undergrad, there's an Asian studies, but there's no India part of that. And it's like,
I think when Pip was before she became the dean, and when she was the dean, there was I think there was a program for Indian legal studies or something. There was, because I came and spoke at that one.
LELPA, it's law and legal practice in Asia, and that was actually a traveling subject.
Yeah, so you could go to India and do internship as well. So that was, I think, had a decent uptake, but I guess it was difficult to, organize things.
I think the verb is coveted.
Oh, is it?
No, it might be uncoveted.
yeah.
Well, we've got for the AMES Australia Lawyers Association National Summit that's coming up in September, end of September. We've got the Indian Chief Justice, the current one, he's retiring now though. He's speaking, he's the keynote speaker. So this time, because one of our members is interning with him, so I said, can you please get him? Like, yeah, okay. So it's more difficult to get a Chief Justice from India than here, probably. It's so difficult to get to them.
Now, look, I have the very unfortunate task of being the timekeeper. So I'm really sorry to end this conversation. It's 2:00. And that means that, you know, some people have to go off to other sorts of things. You know, we're governed by the dictatorship of the hour, I'm afraid. But Molina, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your experience. Thank you for engaging. You know, there are so many interesting and very complex, difficult questions. There are the questions about advocacy that, you know, really important for us to address, you know, the opportunities and the limits of professional organisations as compared to universities, the ways in which we support people in coming through, and also the marvellous, you know, way that you know, you've turned adversity into strength, and you have, you know, used your skills and your genius to support others. And I want to know, what football team did you pick?
Richmond. So we had a good weekend. Sunday was good. I went to the game. So,
Excellent. Really, John, thank you, Molina, for coming in.
thanks for having me. Good.